to Seattle. Geno Smith runs it in with 12 seconds left. He hits the night-night celebration. And we're sitting here talking about a fourth-place team in the NFC West. We got two Gregs and now one Larry. It's a familiar face in a new place. The Niners Nightly host, who's going to have a lot to cram into 1 hour tonight, Larry Krueger, joins us courtesy of the UMA guest line. What's happening, Krug?
Oh. That kind of sums up the Bay Area's collective there, Larry. Was that a moan or a groan? What was that? A little bit of each? You sound like Nick Bosa rushing the passer.
We might just need a Larry Krueger soundboard dedicated to the different sound effects summing up each quarter of Niners football.
Oh, man, Nick Bosa could barely get on the stage last night. And I said, Nick, you don't look too good. And he's like, I don't feel too good. And that was the big turning point in the game. I mean, we could point to a bunch of things, and there are a bunch of things. But the 49ers before and after Bosa, before their defense was dominating, they were giving up 3.3 yards per play. As soon as he went out, all of a sudden they're giving up 6.1 yards per play, and there's no resistance. So obviously Nick Bosa means an awful lot.
And it started on the very first play he went out, the 3rd and 12, when Geno got flushed out to his left. I don't know what Ike Yadam was doing there. Turned into a little bit of a scramble drill, but DK's not a route runner. He just got up higher and went over the top. So we'll hear what Kyle has to say at 3:30, but I think we're all bracing for something with the oblique. It could be a partial tear, a full tear. He had the other side that wasn't in good shape, so maybe he goes on the IR. I don't know. But if they don't have him, and obviously in this game the whole season flipped, but this team has been in the championship game for the last 5 years. The 1 year they did not, Nick tore his ACL early in that season in New York at MetLife Stadium. So Leonard Floyd had some good snaps. He had some bad snaps, especially letting Geno get out. Likewise for Ettore Gross-Matos, a sack, but the rush on the first 16-yard run wasn't good. What's your alpha? What's your bravo? What do they do with the defensive line going to Green Bay and Buffalo if Nick Bosa can't play, Larry?
They're very thin. They're very, very thin. I mean, Nick was playing 86% of the snaps, guys, which was 10% more. I mentioned it to Sorensen the week before, and he's like, we want to win the games. I said, what's the plan to get Nick to January? He's like, we want to win the games. So, I mean, it's like I'm asking one question. He's giving me an answer that doesn't really relate to how you're going to get him up, how you're going to keep him upright. And sure enough, it doesn't look like he's going to be upright. This is a player who lost a full year of his college eligibility in Columbus to a core injury that had to be surgically repaired. So I'm holding my breath. As far as what do they do? We know who they have. They got Ettore Gross-Matos, who looked pretty good yesterday at times. They have Sam O, they have Robert Beal, and they have Leonard Floyd. And then, you could sign a Jason Pierre-Paul off the street. I think he's a free agent. There's Justin Houston. He's on the street. If you want to sign one of those guys off the beach, you could possibly do it. I don't know what they have left or what kind of shape they're in, but those are the top guys that are, as far as accomplishments that are on the street.
Larry, what do you make of Christian McCaffrey's usage since he came back? Because he's looked fine, but hasn't solved the red zone problems that have been plaguing the 49ers. And this per Matt Barrows, actually, he played 59 snaps yesterday. He only did that once last season when he was entirely healthy. That was the Christmas Day game against the Ravens. We discussed a little bit earlier in the show, Greg and I, the possibility of using maybe Jordan Mason and Christian McCaffrey out there together as a way to open up the playbook. I just want to get your thoughts on Mason, McCaffrey, the usage, and just kind of the balance of it all to fix this offense.
Well, I mean, they're using him a lot. It's almost like they've forgotten that J.P. Mason was the league's third leading rusher. He got 2 carries. He averaged 6.5 yards a pop. He doesn't touch the ball again. Guarendo's a game breaker, but I'm pretty sure that you're not breaking the game if you don't get in. So, Guarendo was a high school wide receiver. If they don't feel comfortable flexing out Christian, how about put Guarendo on the outside and let him just run go patterns and he runs 4-3-3. I mean, that right there will help more than what they're doing. They got nothing out of their wide receivers yesterday. Nothing. Debo gave them very little. I mean, Jennings obviously is Jennings. We would be talking about that Jennings third down play if the Niners had won. And I kind of feel really bad for Jennings because that was one of the greatest plays I've seen all year. And we're not going to talk about it at all because it came in a loss. But Jennings caught that ball at 5 yards and then carried the next other two defenders 4 more yards. I mean, that was very impressive. But Ricky Pearsall didn't get any separation. Niner receivers are getting very little, and they don't have a ton of speed there. So Cowing's now been concussed. Otherwise, I'd say use Cowing and throw him on some go routes. But at this point, you may want to use Garendo, who can run, and flex him outside and let him run off the top of the defense. You have to create more space because right now the Niner receivers can't create it for themselves.
And the very situation we brought it up, and when they first got Christian going back a couple of years ago, Elijah Mitchell was here, and they used it whether it was a pony or a rocket. Teams call it different. 2 halfbacks in the game. And the scenario where I thought it could be valuable was late in the game when you're trying to run that 4-minute offense with 3:56 to go. And when they were loading the box, they had a 9-man box on one play and an 8-man box on the other. If you just, use 2 halfbacks in the game and maybe motion McCaffrey out, do you soften the box and run Mason or vice versa? But I just want to ask you the question about philosophy. And I don't know what the analytics show, if we can do research on it. The ball where they threw it on 2nd down and 11. So McCaffrey ran the 1st and 10, and he lost a yard. Seattle called a timeout. Their first timeout, so they got 2 left with 3:02 to play. 2nd down and 11 there. You wind up throwing a pass over the middle. Byron Murphy, the secondary, gets in the way. It's a high throw. Debo misses it, and it's incomplete. And you go from 3:02 on the clock to 2:58 on the clock. You expire only 4 seconds. They don't use a timeout. Then they blitz off the slot, leave Juwan open, bring Witherspoon. They rally up, and they tackle. Juwan stays in bounds, forces them to take the timeout, but you have to punt it back to them with 2:45 to play. It didn't expire enough. So just the analytics, and I know what Kyle's thinking, 9-man box, 8-man box. I'm not going to just, give them a dead play and run it. But even if you do run it and you don't get anything and you force them to use all of their timeouts, they scored the game-winning touchdown with 12 seconds to go. Would they have had time to get down there if they don't have any more timeouts? So just your thoughts on what they did, what they could have done on that fateful 2nd down and 11 call.
Well, they sold out for the first down and then didn't get it. But when they got the ball initially on that drive, there was 3:56 on the clock. When they handed it back to Seattle, there was 2:38. So I mean, they didn't wait. They wasted 1 minute and 20 seconds, 1 minute and 18 seconds. For the entire drive. So, yeah, I mean, they could have run it and they would have burned more clock or forced them to call timeouts. They were aggressively trying to get the first down. But, I mean, then the other thing is they were up 4, so the field goal doesn't beat them. I mean, heck, if I would have loved to have seen them go for it on 4th down. The defense, I mean, the 49er defense did not look good at all at the end. I mean, they gave up long drives. Seattle's 3rd to last drive was 11 plays. Their 2nd to last drive on the turnover on downs was what? How many plays was that? That had to be 10 plays. And then their final drive was 11 plays. So, I mean, the 49er defense, as soon as Bosa went out, they just had no ability to get off the ball. They should have been more aggressive with their offense, knowing that their defense couldn't stop anybody. Instead, they punted it. It went into the end zone. They got the ball in the 20 with 2:28 or 2:38 left, and they moved it all the way down the field. So I mean, it's
you would have gone for it on 4th and 6, Larry.
Well, I mean, Greg, I mean, maybe if you're, I guess I don't know if I would have gone for it on 4th and 6. My point is, if you decide to run there, maybe it's not 4th and 6. Maybe it's 4th and 3. Because you opted to pass and you couldn't get a whole lot done on those 2 passing downs, you only wound up getting 5 yards when it was 2nd and 11. So you only got to 4th and 6. But if let's say you had run the ball and you could have gotten it down to 4th and 4, yeah, I think I would have gone for it right there. I think I really would have gone for it. I would have put my offense out there and taken a chance because the field goal doesn't beat you. They got to get in the end zone. Instead, they kick the ball, it goes into the end zone, and they get it on the 20, and all of a sudden it was, Geno to Metcalf. And they missed Mooney in this game against Metcalf. Let's be honest about that. They never, ever covered Jackson Smith and the Jigba. I mean, they only targeted him 11 times. He caught 10 balls, and this is what he did to the Rams 2 weeks prior. So he's a tough cover, but they didn't cover him. So, I mean, it was just the 49er defense was too thin at the defensive end spot, and they haven't been able to speed up quarterbacks. They really needed help at the deadline. They didn't get any. So it's not surprising. And then they wound up playing Bosa and Floyd extra snaps, and they're worn down. And they're doing the best they can. But you saw Nick at the post game. I mean, he's cooked. I'd be very surprised if he can play for the next couple weeks, if at all, depending on his, if he needs surgery. So they're in a world of hurt at defensive end. They have no way to speed up their opponent.
You're listening to KNBR AM and FM, San Francisco, the sports leader, a Cumulus media station. A few more minutes here with Larry Krueger, host of Niners Nightly, joining us. And you could also hear Krug on 49ers pre- and post-game, as you did yesterday, if you needed a therapeutic place to go and hang out after, another fourth quarter blown lead to a division opponent at home. Brutal. Krug, I want to talk about the Packers just for a moment. And I know you got all week to sort of get into this upcoming matchup, but I look at this as a very dangerous game because the Packers I see as young and very good, but also far from polished. And they're a team that Jordan Love, for as well as he can play and as talented as he is, he will also give you lots of opportunities and mistakes. And I think the 49ers, I see them as an opponent like they did in the second half of the playoffs last year against Green Bay, to force Jordan Love into some mistakes and turn the momentum. But I'm also worried about what you just mentioned, lack of Nick Bosa, not putting any pressure on opposing quarterbacks, and a comfortable Jordan Love seems poised to throw 4 touchdowns in his own stadium.
Yeah, he's really good. And they've had time. They didn't have him earlier this year, and they learned a lesson when they didn't have him. They had Malik Willis in there. First game with Malik Willis, they ran 53 times. The second game with Malik Willis, they ran 37 times. And they actually had some success, and I think it kind of influenced them to not put it all on Jordan Love when he came back. I mean, give you an example. Yesterday against Chicago had the lead in that game, and yet the Packers ran it 25 times and they threw it 17 times. So they're leaning a lot more on Josh Jacobs and their ability to run the ball. And then, bad news for the 49ers, right as they're about to play Green Bay, Christian Watson is starting to round into the form that a lot of people saw for him at North Dakota State. I mean, he had 4 catches for 150. And he is a big-time, big-play guy. They're getting a huge year on the defense out of Xavier McKinney. I mean, McKinney, I think personally, has accounted for like 7 or 8 takeaways by himself. So, he's been a very, very good addition, and they're a little underrated, in all aspects of the game. Now, they didn't play a very good game yesterday against Chicago, and they still found a way to escape with a victory. But they'll play a better game against the 49ers next Sunday.
Without a doubt, and we saw those guys last year and how good they can be, and then they added Xavier McKinney, one of the best defensive acquisitions in the offseason. They got Josh Jacobs, and Aaron Glenn ran all over the Niners last year in the playoff game, but Josh Jacobs is a former rushing champion. I think we're optimistic that George Kittle will be able to come back and play in that game in Green Bay. It's a big reason why he didn't go yesterday, because George does prey on Seattle, and Seattle changed their personnel in the middle of the field yesterday.
Yeah,
I personally, Larry, thought it was going to be a big Deebo Samuel game, and he does play well historically against Seattle. Had the 76-yard touchdown against them 5.5 weeks ago when he beat Love, their safety, Julian Love. Not a great game for Deebo. They gave it to him one time in the jet sweep. He lost a yard. They just can't get the edge with him, and when they do, they commit a penalty. He was targeted on that faithful 2nd down 11, 7 targets, caught 4. For a meager 22 yards. Why are they not able to get Deebo open? Kyle told me one time last year, my entire thought process in life is to get Deebo Samuel the ball in these spots on the field with room to run after. They just have not been able to shake him free. He's in great shape. He's in a big contract year. He does have a contract for next year, but it's kind of a pivot point in his Niner career. Why is he not having the bust-out year we all thought he was going to have?
Well, I think he has lost a step. He's running a little tentatively on the east-west plays. I mean, those used to be check the angle. When you used to see that play, his first three steps were faster. He was taking, when he got to the sideline, he's taking more of a up the field north-south type angle. He's now running that parallel to the line of scrimmage, and at best he'll veer off and get 2 or 3 yards. Most times he's barely getting back to the line of scrimmage. He had that one run yesterday. He was tackled for a loss. I mean, these plays used to routinely get 8 to 12 yards routinely, and then when he would bust it, they'd get 20 yards. Now, he's lucky if he gets 3 to 5 yards when he hits it, and he'll lose 3 to 5 yards on that same play. So, I mean, personally, I just think it's a little bit of lack of foot speed with Debo and explosiveness. I would love to see the same play with Guerrero because it's not necessarily a running back play. It's an end around or a jet sweep, and you're reading. It's not quite like a running back where you got to pick and slide and find a hole, which is not what Guerrero's great at. But Guerrero's got 4.3 speed, and I'd love to see if they could get a bigger play out of that with a faster back.
Larry, just one more for you, and this is a little bit of a broader picture question, but a couple of the points that got brought up to me on social media yesterday in 49ers discussion was this team is starting to finally feel the ripple effects of the Trey Lance trade. And yes, Brock Purdy, getting him at 262, washed that out to have your guy, but they also traded a lot of draft picks. And my pushback on that is, well, you look at this draft class, and they've all been capable and more for John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan to be on a roster. On the other hand, you think about paying Brock Purdy in this offseason. You think about the money you already owe to Brandon Ayuk, who's going to be coming off a big injury. And then on top of that, you've got Dre Greenlaw coming back, who we can't necessarily know how he's going to be fresh off of an Achilles, and he seems super missed right now. So I guess I just want to ask the broader picture question of, do you think there's any truth to some of the ripple effects of the Trey Lance trade? Do you think it's age? Do you think it's just wear and tear of the hard style of football they play?
I think it's a great point, first of all, by you. I think it's bigger than the Trey Lance trade. It's really it's 3 factors that you're seeing come home to roost this year. It's the 7 missed number ones. You missed 7 times in the first round. Reuben Foster, Solomon Thomas, Mike McGlinchey, Javon Kinlaw, and Trey Lance. And for those 5 players, you devoted 7 number ones. So you got very little out of 7 number ones. Really 8, because you're not getting tons out of Pearsall right now. So really it's Bosa and Ayuk have been the number ones that have done pretty well for you. The other number ones have not done well. Then the combination of that and then, getting rid of a lot of their quality depth to go after Javon Hargrave, that I don't think that was the right move in concert with 7 missed picks on number ones. The combination of those 2 things, and then you mix in just a regular number of injuries, some of them to some key players this year, and you're just remarkably thin. So, their defensive line, they don't have 2 D lines like they used to. And so they're having to play Bosa more than they want. And now he's hurt. They're having to play Floyd more than they want. Now he's hurt. So I mean they're in that spot. They've had 2 major moves, those picks and then the Hargrave move, that have depleted their depth, mix in some injuries, and they're just relatively thin. And their depth had been able to lift them up in the past, and it's been unable to this year. So I think the Hargrave move was an okay move. It just wasn't the right move on the tail end of missing on all those ones.
Krug, always great catching up with you. We appreciate you joining us, and have fun on Niners Nightly later, as I'm sure you're going to have a lot to fill this coming week with a 5-5 team that's got to go to Lambeau Field, and then Buffalo after that. One day at a time, right?
I'm doing the rewatch this afternoon, and we're going to devote no guests tonight. No guests. It'll be all your phone calls at 808 KNBR. We're going to let people vent and have their say, and they're going to fire people. They're going to cut people. They're going to trade people, and I'm all here for it at 6 o'clock. So Line them up, 808 KNBR at 6.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Larry. Always good to catch up with our guy Krug, and we're about 15 minutes away from talking to Eric Branch of the San Francisco Chronicle. So we're going to go ahead and take a break. We'll be